Okay. So we sort of have been doing subtraction a little bit, right? When we added negative numbers, that was sort of like subtracting. Maybe we didn't think about it that way, but it's sort of what is going on. So the first thing that we probably have to discuss is just to remember that, what is an opposite? Okay. The opposite of a real number is called its additive inverse. Okay. And the sum of a number and its additive inverse is 0. So in general, what we could say is that if we have some random number, let's give it a placeholder value, a. Okay, then what this statement is saying is that if we added its additive inverse or its opposite, then we should be adding negative a. Okay, and that if we add a number, remember, this is just a variable that's a placeholder for a number, and its opposite, when we add those together, what should we get? Does anybody know? Does anybody remember? Is it a little bit confusing when they're variables?
Is it whatever the larger number is? Is that what you're asking?
No.
Oh.
So I'm saying that if I have a number and I add its opposite, I should get some value here.
The same.
Well, no, let's think about this in concrete terms, right? Maybe it's a little bit confusing because I haven't given you a number, right? Let's think about a concrete example, like what do I get if I have 5 plus negative 5, a number and its opposite?
Oh, 0.
0.
Yeah.
Right? If I have negative 100 plus positive 100, what do I get?
0.
100.
You get what?
100.
It's
When
0.
When you have negative 100 and then you add 100?
0.
It's 0.
Yeah, it should be 0 because they cancel out. Right? Like if I had negative $100 in the bank and then I decided, okay, finally I'm going to go ahead and deposit that $100 into my bank account. What should the bank tell me that I have as a balance? Well, it should tell me that I have $0 because I just paid back my debt, right? So if I have a number plus its opposite, that is always going to be 0. Okay. So we need to be able to find the opposite of a value in order to sort of really understand this concept. If you were asked to find the additive inverse, and I'll continue using that terminology. But whenever you see additive inverse, just think to yourself the opposite. Okay. Find the additive inverse. Let's say that I asked you, what is the opposite of 3?
Negative
Negative
3.
3.
Negative 3. Right, and that should make sense that if I add 3 plus negative 3, I should get 0. The opposite of negative 7.3.
Positive 7.3.
Yeah, positive 7.3. And we don't have to put a plus sign in front of that. We understand that if we don't have a sign, like a minus sign or a positive sign, that is automatically positive. Okay. And if I ask you, what is the additive inverse of 0? What is that?
0.
Yeah, great. Right, so 0 is the only number whose additive inverse or whose opposite is itself. Okay. So maybe I'll make a note here. 0 is the only number whose opposite is itself. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? This also works with fractions. So if I asked you, what is the additive inverse of 1/2? What should that be?
Negative 1/2.
Negative 1/2. Okay. All right. Is everybody okay with this page?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you scoot up can you scoot it up?
Like this way?
Yeah, scoot it up more. Oh, scoot down, I'm sorry. Yeah, I need to get the fraction. That was it.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. Okay, so when we were talking about addition, I was saying that when you add numbers, it's sort of like sliding one direction or the other on the number line. But traditionally, when we think about addition, we think about addition as accumulating. Or piling up. Basically, you typically think about addition as a number growing. And that is only true when you're adding positive values. Because if you're adding positive values, then you're moving in the positive direction on the number line. But when you added a negative value, you're actually moving in the left direction, in the negative direction on the number line. So this intuition for accumulating or piling up, that when you add, your number has to get bigger, that is only true when you're adding positive numbers. Okay. When we add negatives, we should be getting smaller. I'm going to put smaller in quotations because the numbers will seem bigger as we move further and further in the negative direction because their absolute value is bigger, but we actually consider like negative 100 to be a smaller number than negative 1. So maybe I should emphasize that, right? So if 0 is here and we have negative 1 here and negative 100 way out here, this is technically a smaller number, smaller or lesser value compared to all of the numbers on the right of it. So when we want to think about adding a negative number, we can think about accumulating or piling up, but we need to be thinking about that movement piling up in the negative direction. Okay. In subtraction, though, we want to find the difference between two numbers. And that's usually how mathematicians will refer to subtraction. They'll say, find the difference between two numbers. Okay. So when you hear find the difference, that problem is asking you to subtract. Okay, so when we say find the difference, we're literally saying find the distance between those two numbers. Okay, so if we were to look at a statement like, for instance, well, we could do 6 minus 4, right? Something that we should intuitively know what the answer is, right? What is 6 minus 4? Yeah, it should just be 2. And we'll think about what that looks like on the number line. Well, if I have my number line here, and let's say we have 4, 5, 6, what we're saying is like, what we can think about this is finding the change in the value. And what I mean by that is, let's think about, we'll start here. Or rather, we end up here. This is our end value. So we ended up at 6 somehow. And we want to know how we got there if we started at 4. So 4 is our start value. Okay. So it's a little bit backwards to think about it this way, with where the end value is what we ended up with, or is going in the front of this problem. But if we wanted to sort of count the distance between 4 and 6, where 4 is the start value, and we needed to get to 6, then what direction did we have to move from 4 to get to 6? Do we move to the right?
To the right.
Yeah. So we moved to the right. And how many units did I have to move to get there?
2.
2 units. So that's why our resulting value is a positive 2. Because positive tells you the direction you traveled. Right? And the direction you traveled from the start point to the end point. Okay, but again, just to clarify, with subtraction, it's written a little bit backwards. The end value comes first. So that's like your stopping place. And the second number is your starting place. And when you find the distance between them, we can say 2 units. But what direction did we move to get from 4 to 6? We moved to the right, so that's why our answer should be positive. Okay. Is everybody okay with this one?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's look at another example. Very similar. Let's examine. Let's do 6 minus -4. Does anybody know what the answer here should be?
It should be positive 2.
No, but that's a good guess.
Is it -2?
6.
No, it's not -2 either.
5.
It's 10.
It's 10?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's positive 10. Is that confusing?
Yes. Explain the logic.
Okay. Well, I just got finished saying subtraction is finding the distance between 2 numbers, right? So if we're on the number line and we are, let me put a 0 here in the middle because we have 2 numbers that we're comparing with subtraction. We're looking at 6, and remember that is my ending point, my end point.
0.
And then I'm looking at
3.
-4, which is my start point.
5.
And I need to find the distance between these 2 numbers. That's what subtraction is doing. So if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is my endpoint, and 1, 2, 3, 4, that's -4 for my start point. to go from my start point to my end point, how many units did I travel? Well, if I started here, then I have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I moved 10 units in which direction?
Okay, to the right.
10 units to the right. That's why my answer should be positive 10.
Now I got it.
Okay, so in your head, and if this is you in this camp, you are not alone. A lot of people will just see the 6 and the 4 and they'll subtract and they'll say, okay, my answer has to be 2 or negative 2. But we can't be guessing around, right? Because when it comes to a quiz or when it comes to a test, if you make that guess and you don't get it right, well, it's going to be super frustrating because you're not going to know why. You have to understand what subtraction is doing. It's finding the distance between the two numbers that you're given. And the sign of your answer is dependent on what direction you moved. Okay. So what we can say is that, okay, this is helpful to visualize what is going on, to explain why 6 minus negative 4 is 10. But if these numbers were larger, let's say that we had 15 minus negative 25. Right? Let me write this as another example. Can anybody guess what this answer should be? Any takers?
Is it 40?
Yeah, it is 40. And how did you get that?
I did like what we did in the other one, like, cause it's like 6, like the other one it's like 6 plus 4,
Yeah,
and then I just added like 15 and 25.
yeah, that works for this one, right? But let me explain to you why. So what we could do, we could draw a number line for sure, but with these numbers, they're already too big. We really don't want to draw a number line because then we're going to be comparing two really big numbers, right? Like here is 0. I need to go to 15 for my endpoint. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And see, this is already kind of cumbersome. And now I have to walk to negative 25. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. That's negative 25. We don't want to be doing this, right? I mean, we could, in order to get from our end point, sorry, this is our start point, and this is the end point. In order to get from our end point back to 0, I know that needs to be 25 units. And in order to get from 0, like let's take a pit stop, a break, and then we can get to 15. And so if I needed to find out what is the total of distance that I traveled here, then that would be like adding up these distances, right? So what we can do is, instead of drawing a number line every time, we could think about subtraction as adding opposites. So subtraction is like adding the opposite of a number. Okay, and what do I mean by that? What I mean is that we can take 15 minus negative 25, and if that's sort of confusing to think about, what we can do is keep the original number, right? The first number that's written down, we'll keep that the same. And instead of subtracting negative 25, we will add the opposite of negative 25. What is the opposite of negative 25?
25.
It's positive 25. So now if we look at this problem, we're adding two positive numbers, and that's a lot easier to work with. That way we get 40, which is the exact same answer that we should have gotten for the problem as it was originally written. So whenever you have a number, and I'm going to write this down in general, so with variables here. In general, if I have A minus B, I can rewrite that as keep the original number, and I will just add the opposite of B.
Did anyone else's screen go black?
No.
No.
We're having some technical
It's
difficulties.
Maria, my screen is completely black.
I'm not sure what, are you able to do anything like hit the
I
escape
can hear
button?
you, but I can't see you.
Okay.
I'm gonna relaunch.
Okay. Okay, so
Okay, there it is.
awesome. Yeah, usually you can hit the escape button in case the display for whatever freezes on a black screen. But if that doesn't work, and if you have to like restart your computer, just restart it and jump back in and try to catch up. Remember, I'll post this video later.
Okay.
But in general, what I'm saying here is that for subtraction, as a rule of thumb, you can always do this where if I have two numbers that I'm subtracting, I can switch from subtraction to addition. So I can change to addition, but then I have to change the second number to its opposite. So I'll just write here that this is the opposite of this original number. You guys okay with that one?
No, not yet.
Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns so far?
Can you give another example?
Yeah, I'm going to throw a bunch of examples at you right now. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. So here's some practice problems. -4 minus 1. Let's work through this together. Anybody tell me what this should be?
-3.
Let's see. You're saying -3?
Okay. That's, yeah.
Well,
5.
I'm hearing 5 now.
2, 3, 4.
So I'm hearing 3 and 5.
4.
I'm hearing 4.
-3.
I'm hearing -3.
-5.
-5. Okay. Well, it can't possibly be all of these, right? So for those of you who think that it's 5, can you tell me why you think it's 5? Or do we not think it's 5 anymore?
I want to change my number to negative 5.
To -5.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me why you think it's -5?
Because you're going back toward the left. Because it's subtraction and the -4 minus 1. Oh no, it would be -3.
You said keep, change. So if
Right.
you kept -4, add 1 or -1, it's -5.
Let's think about this, all right? Our definition of subtraction is, let's think about it on the number line. Our first rule for subtraction is that we need to think about this as the ending point, right? That's the end. This is the starting value. And subtraction is saying find the difference or the distance, right? Between those numbers on the number line. So if I were to draw a number line, and let me just put 0 here, I'm going to find my starting place, which is 1. My ending place, which was -4. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's -4. And I need to start here, that's my start, and move to my ending point here. So I need to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units to the left. Correct? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if I moved 5 units to the left, what should my answer be?
-5.
-5. Okay. So for those of you that were guessing 3 or -3, you need to be very careful because what your brain is doing is trying to take 4 and subtract 1. And then you're saying like, okay, I don't know what to do with the sign, so I'm just going to pick one. We can't be guessing. We have to be able to understand what is going on in this problem, right? So for those of you, I think that Sarah said we could do the keep, change. That is going to work as well. But again, you need to be careful. So let me work this another way. So if we wanted to, we could have -4 minus 1. But what we could do is keep, change. So we will keep the first number the same. We'll change to addition, and we'll change to the opposite of 1. So what that is telling me, then I should have -4, that stays the same. Change to addition, and then add the opposite of 1, which is -1. So I keep, change. Now, can anybody tell me what was the rule for adding numbers that have the same sign?
It still keeps the same sign.
You add the numbers and keep the sign, right? So 4 and 1 is 5, and then they're both negative, so you keep the sign. Either way we did this, whether we drew a number line or whether we use keep, change, you're getting the same result. That tells you that you're on the right track. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so just be very careful. Don't just jump in there and let your brain go wild, right? We're trying to get this down. And if you like are just guessing at things or just doing random operations, then you're not going to be understanding why the subtraction results in the number that you get. Okay. Let's do some more. Let's look at -1 minus -8. Okay. How do you guys want to approach this? Do you want to do the number line or do you want to do keep, change?
Change.
I like
Okay.
keep, change.
Okay. So let's do keep, change. I'm going to keep the -1. I'm going to change this to addition. And I'm going to change to +8. Okay. Now I have an addition problem. I don't want to look at the original problem as I wrote it because I changed it to an equivalent expression. Now I have to figure out how to add a negative number and a positive number. Can anybody tell me how I do that?
By subtracting.
Right. So remember, when you're adding numbers with opposite signs or with different signs,
Subtract and keep the larger numbers.
keep the sign of the larger, right? So we're gonna take the larger number, subtract the smaller number from that one, and we'll get 7. But we need to keep the sign of the larger. The larger was positive, so we'll keep this as a positive 7. And you don't have to put the plus in front of it. I just did it to be extra. Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Or are there any questions or comments there? Is that still kind of confusing?
I probably need to work through a few more just to make sure I'm understanding. Can you do like a bigger number again?
Yeah, for sure. But before I do that, let me just show you how the intuition should be the same even if we were to draw a number line, right? So I'm going to go back to my original problem here. And I'm looking for the distance between these two numbers, -1 and -8. So this is my start point for -8. My end point is -1. I'm going to draw the number line. I'm going to say that -1 is here. So this should be -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8. And the reason why the number line is okay for this one is because the numbers are kind of small. If I start at -8 and I needed to move and find the distance to get to my end point, I need to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units to the right, which means that my answer should be +7. But see how both of those techniques, they lead you to the same answer. So if you can work a problem 2 different ways and you get the same thing, then chances are you're doing the right thing. You're getting the process down. Okay. So you want larger numbers, right? Let's go ahead and do that. Let me go with, let's go with 48 minus -32. Let me go with -53 minus -20. Okay. I'll go with 180, -183 minus 45. And that should be good. Okay. If we need some more, I'll come up with some more practice problems. But okay, for the first one, how do we want to approach that?
The keep, change.
Yeah, let's do the keep, change. Okay, so I'll go ahead and switch this to 48 plus, and then the opposite of -32 is +32. And then that's just straight up addition with positive numbers, right? So what should my answer be?
80.
Yeah, so this will be 50, and then we have a 30, so we should get 80 for our answer. Any questions about that one?
No.
Okay. Excuse my cat, he's being a little whiny right now. Okay. So we're going to do keep, change for the second one, right? Because that seems to be easier than doing the number line. every single time a number line would just be really cumbersome. So let's continue with keep, change, change. We're going to keep this as negative 53. And then we will add the opposite of negative 20, which is just positive 20.
And then we
But-
actually subtract.
But now we actually subtract, right? Because we have addition with different signs. Okay. So when we have addition with different signs, we take the larger number with the larger absolute value, which is 53. We're going to subtract 20. And then we'll keep the sign of the larger. Okay. So we'll subtract this out. 3 minus 0 is 3. 5 minus 2 is 3. And then we need to keep the sign of the larger, which in this case will be negative. So our answer should be negative 33. Does anybody have questions about that one? Okay, so can anybody tell me what the answer? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you, can I give you the answer that I got for that last one to make sure I did it correctly?
Yeah, let's go ahead and tell me what you got.
I got negative 138.
Negative 138. Let me think about this.
I got negative 228.
I think that the second answer, the negative 228, is probably going to be correct.
Wow.
Okay, so you have to be very careful and do the same thing every time, the keep, change, change. Okay, so let's do keep, change, change. We need to keep this number,
I
negative
did that.
183. We change to addition. And then we need to change 45 to its opposite. Okay. But here's the trick, right? Now we're adding numbers that have negative signs. How do I add two negatives?
You just add them.
You add the numbers, keep the common sign. Right? So I'm going to add 183 plus 45. That will give me 8. This will be 12. 1 up, 228. But they're both negative, so I should be getting negative 228.
See, that's what's throwing me off. Well, that's
So-
why I asked for the bigger numbers. Because you see how you started out with the negative 183 minus 45.
Yes.
Okay, so I went and I did that. I changed it up.
You
But-
changed to this.
Correct.
Okay.
But then what I did is I subtracted instead of adding.
Okay. Well, remember that you're only subtracting when you're adding numbers that have the opposite sign.
Okay, okay.
And since these both were negative, you add their absolute values, keep the common sign. That was the rule for addition. So we just have to practice those addition rules, because what we're doing is essentially taking a subtraction problem and then going into the world of addition. And addition has those two cases, right? Adding with the common sign, adding with different signs. Okay, but another way that you can think of this, just to have an intuition for it, right? If I have negative 183 in my bank account, right? Let's just think about the original problem. If I have negative 183 in my bank, and then I use on my debit card and charge $45, so I spend $45. Shouldn't I have a larger negative balance?
Yes, okay. I didn't even look at it that way, but okay.
Because I spent more money, right? So I should owe the bank some more money. And we're not even talking about overdraft fees here, right?
Right.
But
Okay.
that negative amount should look bigger.
Okay, give me another one.
Yeah, let's do some more. Let's do 6, we will do negative 253 minus 81. I'll give you guys a few more. We'll do negative 7 minus negative, let's go with 120 and 8. We will go with 52 minus negative 48. Okay. Okay, so for the first one, what do we want to do? How do we want to proceed?
Change, keep change.
Keep, change, right? So I'm going to keep this number the same. Change to addition. Change this number to negative 81, to its opposite. Okay.
And just add.
So now they're the same sign. So we're adding with the same sign. So all we're going to do here is take our 253, add our 81, and keep the common sign. So we should get 4. I think this should be 13 with the 1 up, and that should be a 3. But we're going to keep the common sign. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Is that one okay?
I got that.
Okay. Let's take a look at the next one. Going to continue with keep, change, right? I have negative 57. We'll switch to addition. And we'll change this to its opposite, which is positive 120. But now, different scenario, right? We're adding with different signs. So whenever you think of difference or a different sign, we should subtract the numbers, okay? When we're adding with different signs, we have to look at the larger number, take the larger number, subtract the smaller number, and keep the sign of the larger. So we have 120, I have to borrow, so get 10 over here. That'll give me 3. I have to borrow again, that'll give me 11, that'll give me 6. So I have 63, and I need to keep the sign of the larger, so that's why this will stay positive. Are we okay with that one?
Yeah, I did that one correct.
Okay, and to give you another intuition for this, right? Like if I have $120 and I add a debt of negative 57, well, that's like money that I need to pay. So I should be getting a smaller amount, but that 57 that they're taking away from me is not enough to drag me into the negative, into a negative balance. So that's why I should have a positive here. Okay. For the last problem, right, we should keep, change. So let's go ahead and keep 52, change to addition, then change this number to its opposite, 48. Well, now we're just adding numbers that are positive, right? Adding the same sign. So I should just add those numbers up, keep the common sign.
Yep, it's 100.
Yeah, we should get 100 here. Is that getting a little bit clearer?
Yes.
You got to slow your roll a little bit. especially when there are a bunch of minus signs and negative signs in the mix. You got to slow it down. But what I'm telling you is that the keep change change rule, if you carry it out exactly the same way every time, you should get an addition problem that then you have to decide, am I adding with the same sign? Am I adding with different signs? Okay. So now you're going to run into some word problems in your homework. And these word problems are going to say things like find the change in value or find the net value. Okay, so we'll need to talk about change in value. And this is just a fancy way of describing subtraction. Change in value is equal to the end value minus the beginning value, which is exactly the way we formulated subtraction to begin with. So if we're given a word problem, then we'll have to decipher what is the ending value that we're talking about in this scenario, what is the beginning value. And so when it asks you what is the change in value, we'll be able to get the correct number for our answer and the correct sign. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example, and it's a word problem, so give me some time to write this down. At noon on Tuesday, the temperature was 34 degrees Fahrenheit. By noon on Thursday, the temperature had changed to -5 degrees Fahrenheit. How much did the temperature change between Tuesday and Thursday? Okay. So you'll find that, a lot of students will say, I don't really like word problems. And I think that what they're really saying to me is I don't really like reading, which is fine. You don't have to like reading. It is a useful skill, and we'll have to sort of use it in order to get through some of these lengthier word problems. But I would argue that all problems in life are word problems. You have to understand a problem before you can solve it. So what we need to do, as I ramble on to give you guys some time to write this, what we need to do is figure out how can we set this problem up to calculate the change in the temperature between Tuesday and Thursday using this formula here. So if I were to take the information given and write it as a subtraction problem, how would I do that?
34 degrees minus 5 degrees.
Well, be careful.
34 degrees minus -5.
Oh, we have to be very careful. What is the ending value?
34.
Is that the ending value, or is that the value in the beginning of the week?
Oh, okay, so it's -5
Right.
is the
So
end value.
Oh,
Third-
okay. Okay.
Thursday is the end of the week. So this has to be the ending value, right? And Tuesday is the beginning of the week. So this has to be the beginning value.
Okay.
Okay. So when we write this down, we need to write it down as the ending value, which is -5, minus the beginning value, which was 34. So we need to calculate this in order to get our change in the value. Well, this is just a subtraction problem. So how should I handle this subtraction problem?
Keep change, change.
Keep change, change, right? So I'll keep this -5, change to addition, change this to its opposite, which is -34. Okay, is everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay. So how do I add these two numbers now?
You just add them and keep the sign.
Add the numbers, keep the sign, right? Because they're the same sign, they're both negatives. So my answer here should be what?
-39.
-39. And that is that the temperature dropped, right? 39 degrees.
No,
So if-
ma'am.
What's up?
I'm sorry, I should have had my mic muted.
Okay. So what we're saying is that if you're thinking about a thermometer, right? And if this is the ending value, then we can think about a thermometer this way, right? A thermometer is usually written vertically. I don't know, this is a really bad thermometer. That -5 is down here, and 34 is somewhere up here. That to go from my beginning value to this value, I had to have gone 39 units down, but down implies
To the
negative.
left.
Yeah, down or left implies negative. So that's why my change in value is a drop of 39 degrees, right? So the negative sign is sort of like saying we dropped 39 degrees. Does anybody have any questions about that one?
Yeah, that one confused me a little bit.
We just have to get used to identifying what is the ending value and what is the beginning value, because the formula will always be the same, the end value minus the beginning value. Okay, so let's do another example then. Hopefully, with enough of these examples, we'll start to clarify what's going on here. Again, this one is not going to be about temperature, but again, it's a word problem, so just bear with me. A jet pilot flew her plane from an altitude of 30,000 feet to an altitude of 12,000 feet. What is the change in altitude? Okay, so I'll write down the formula here again just to get the idea of what we're doing here to calculate a change in a value. So remember, what we need to do is take the end value and subtract the beginning value, and that will give us the change in the value. Okay. So I need to set up a subtraction problem before I can solve this. So how would I set that up? What is the end value here?
12,000.
12,000. Okay. And the beginning value?
30,000.
Or 30,000.
30,000. Okay. So let's think about this like, let's pretend for a moment that we're not talking about altitude. Let's pretend that we're talking about money. Because I think that with money, we have a better intuition of, whether we should have a positive value at the end or whether we should have a negative value. If I had $12,000 and I spent 30,000, should I have a positive amount or a negative amount at the end?
Negative.
I should have a negative amount. So we should hold that in our heads because that is correct. Our sign should be negative in the end. But let's go ahead and use keep change change and just be consistent with that, right? If we do keep change, we should keep this 12,000, change to addition, and change this to the opposite, right? Negative 30,000. And like maybe this is already a little bit overly complicated, but when we add numbers with different signs, what do?
Subtract.
We subtract. We take the larger number, so this one's the larger one, larger absolute value, 30,000, subtract the 12,000, and then we keep the sign of the larger.
Negative 18.
Yeah. So if I'm subtracting, I should get zeros here. I need to borrow here. That should be 8. 2 minus 1 is 18. There we go. Or I'm sorry, 2 minus 1 is 1. So we should get 18,000. But like we said at the beginning of this, if I have a smaller number and I take something that's much bigger away from it, my answer should be negative. Well, that when we keep change, and we did this process, the sign of the larger number is also negative. So this answer should be negative. Okay. So that's all the material that I wanted to cover today. I really wanted to emphasize, what is going on with subtraction and give you guys some breathing room so that you can practice that homework. So that will cover this material for this week. And one thing before I let you guys go, I think that you guys should have gotten an email or maybe a notification to your phones that next week, the Alamo Colleges and St. Philip's has decided to extend remote learning for another week. So next week we will be meeting in Zoom again. So just be aware that we will not meet on campus next week. Okay. Does anybody have questions about that?
Not about that, but
Okay.
yesterday you briefly went over the polygons. Yeah. Polygons. Sorry. What we went over, is that enough for us to complete, or do we really need to pay attention to the learn? Because I'm not gonna lie, I don't pay as attention to the learn.
No, you know what? I would say that what I teach in class, I try to give you all that you will know so that you don't have to use the learn section in Hawks.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so if you just jump straight into practice and then go straight into certify, that's perfectly fine.
Okay,
Because I've been doing the learn and the other ones too.
Yeah, if you find value in the learn section, then it is there for you, use it. There are some times when the learn, I know that I can go on and be very rambly, but sometimes the learn overcomplicates some things, and I find that it confuses students. So if you're ever in a situation where you're finding the learn section to be more confusing than helpful, forget about it. Do not look at that. Just review the notes.
Yeah, I think the way, for me anyway, I'm very ADHD, diagnosed with it, but I don't take any medication for it either.
Sure.
But you teach in a way that I am able to keep up with and understand. So
Okay, yeah. And if that's working for you, then do that.
Okay.
The important thing is that you complete the certify, because that's your homework grade.
Right. So what you went over on the polygons, that is enough?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Thanks for all the examples.
Oh, you're welcome.
They really did help.
Okay, I'm glad. All right, so you guys have a good weekend. I'll see you next time. If you have any problems between now and then, just shoot me a message in Remind and shoot me a message in Canvas inbox. I'm going to be updating some stuff in Canvas. So if you see some things wiggling around, that's just me. That's just working in the background.
Thank you.
Okay, see you next time.
Bye.